So, Durbar Springs. With a bit of time on our hands, I decided to have a look around. There's some rock art visible on the sides of the gorge near the camp area if you know where to look. Further up the gorge, there's a fairly sizable pool of water, and a little more art to be seen. A while ago, 2 large date palms were removed from the springs as they had crowded out all the native plant life and were using a significant proportion of the groundwater. After they had been removed, the springs sprung back to life.
Alright, so we've had the power pole crimp on the USB-C power delivery charger fail, and the problem is we don't know which side is negative, which side is positive. Of course you can tell that little stripe, it's always the negative side. The problem is the other half of you are also writing a comment saying the stripe is always the positive side. So multimeter it up and see which side connects to the USB ground, and that will be the negative side.
This really is a beautiful place, especially at sunrise and sunset.
Battery power. The main got down to 40 amp hours remaining, so I'm dumping the 25 amp hour portable battery pack into it to have some power for the radios for tonight and make sure the fridge lasts overnight. Had some thoughts as to whether 100 amp hours is quite enough, but on the other hand we don't tend to do this kind of trip every day. Emptied this water tank but still have 2 jerry cans, which we filled one up at the last well. Now there is water in the springs, but yeah, nah, thank you. When we head off tomorrow, well 18 is restored, so we should be able to pull some water from there. Failing that, there's not a lot of water on that page. We're not down to any level that's critical or anything. Now, diesel. Those 2 are now empty. We emptied them both before today. That one emptied last night. So now we've gone through those three more jerry cans of diesel and a nearly full tank, and we're about halfway to Kanawarochi. So I think we're tracking pretty good. Well, this just starts charging, glitches out, and then seems to just blow the fuse. So I think it's dead.
Rusty started his vehicle to charge batteries, and we decided to try charging the battery pack in a little more unregulated manner, just keeping an eye on the current. Turns out this was acceptable, so the battery pack wasn't so useless without the charger after all. Following the waste disposal track around the mouth of the gorge, we went for a walk. This truly was an amazing place. Selecting a spot where the water wasn't so green, we filtered some to have a shower with. It was still a deep yellow, so we weren't really sure how good it would taste, but it should be fine to shower in.
Yeah, broke again. Basically just drilled
2 holes in the bottom, and we're going to bolt it in on the bottom. Alright, firewall check, fuel good, battery nearly flat, water tanks need filling, 2 nights in Durba Springs, and ready to go. Staying for 2 nights was certainly recommended, but it was time to get going again. We headed on from Durba Springs towards the next spot. Turning off to the Deeble Hills, the track became a lot narrower and overgrown. Some sections were quite washed out and required a bit of care to traverse. But other sections were just completely rutted. This section crosses a sand-filled river, but unfortunately the spot where you're meant to leave the river, located a bit upstream, was too overgrown to spot. The sand was getting deeper, and we realised we weren't going the right way. Turning back, we found the turnoff we should have taken, and left some branches in the shape of an arrow to point to it. We stopped at the first turnoff for lunch. We were very careful to follow the previously formed track, even if it did have a lot of growth over the top of it. But 2 years of track closure, combined with 2 years of some of the heaviest rainfall the area has ever seen, has resulted in a lot of regrowth. Alright, now. And here we arrived at Deeble Springs. Somewhere in that V up there lies the Deeble Spring, but it's just too overgrown to get up there and find it. Continuing on, the inevitable result of hitting too many trees with the side mirror has occurred. We're out at the end of the track, and there's a big flat plain here and a grassy soak that would be nice to camp on. I think this is a place where very few other people have been any time recently. Spotting something silver in the bushes, I pick it up and snap it back onto the mirror. It appears that there are also consequences for driving through that much foliage, so as we proceeded to remove half a tree from our vehicle and a lot of spinifex from the radiator, we decided that the best time to attach the shade cloth to the front of the vehicle would have been before we entered this sidetrack. However, the second best time would be now. I also applied some duct tape to hold the mirror back in place, because it came off a few times after that. It's had a long history of foliage-related impacts, so the plastic clips aren't exactly in good shape. Down this way lies madness. Some good views, but also madness. Yeah, we've got another crack forming on the number plate. Back to the canning. The track on the stock route actually seemed pretty good by comparison. Another day, another broken trailer. Wenikuju, well 18, was fully restored in 2000 after previously being restored in Snell's 1929 expedition, and it brought up water that, although a bit discoloured, tasted okay. We took on 60 litres here. It was a little minerally, but it certainly wasn't as bad as the plastic tasting water we started with in the tank. I think we have had a slight cracker related issue. Detouring again off the main track, we headed to Wangunya Rockhole. And from here, another burnt out vehicle. Well, it would seem that some didn't get the message about the track being closed. It would have been pretty hot to do this in January though. Some do, but it's certainly not recommended. At this point, we headed for the shore of Lake Disappointment. We currently have no eggs left. I think the rest got pretty broken.
QSL, does that mean you're going to be negotiating later retreat tomorrow?
Yes, most likely. Why do you ask?
I think I might make it here so I don't have to like...
No, wait, hang on. Wrong channel. It's named Lake Disappointment because in 1897 Frank Ham expected to find fresh water here but didn't. Scenery-wise, on the other hand, it certainly wasn't disappointing. The ominous-looking dark clouds that we were concerned about had gone away, and we now had a lot of blue sky. This was the first time we'd failed to ascend a dune. This one was particularly steep and it was difficult to grip because the surface had become so chopped up. But with the second try and a bit more power, we made it over. Okay, copy that. You said according to the map book it was like a sign on a star picket, right?
Yep.
There's supposed to be a Tropic of Capricorn marker up here, but I can't seem to find it. This one exists further down the track, but it's not quite in the right spot. Kunengurtiti, well 19, is dry and rusted out, and nothing remains to see. This well was originally named Kununagi by Canning, the first of such to have been given an Aboriginal name. Another broken trailer stands on the side of the track, this one full of rubbish.
Hey, it is as the POI says, that is a big termite mound.
And then another one, not much further down. This was it, Savoury Creek Crossing. This can make or break a canning trip. It can sometimes be too deep to cross. It's infamously a boggy mess, and after rain you can sometimes be stuck here for a few days waiting for the level to go down. Diff locked, traction control disabled, and low range selected, it was time to go. Okay, that was nothing. I'm almost disappointed. Savoury Creek was named by Canning after Bob Savoury, the lessee of a station near Newman who had provided supplies for Canning's survey of the rabbit-proof fence. Continuing on from there, we followed Savoury Creek up to the junction, turning towards Well 20. Not much of perennial Well 20 remained, some stock trough and a sign. In 1955, Jack Gordon became very ill just before reaching this well, and half his mob of 500 head of cattle died before he was well enough to draw up water for them. We continued on up the shore of Lake Disappointment. Stopping at Lakeview, we viewed the lake before continuing on. Passing through boggy Claypan, it was pretty boggy. Best not to stop here. But soon after that, we were back to our usual sand. And there it was, Jillapuka Well 21. This well had undermined itself, becoming a very sizable hole. If it remains as acceptable as this, we could probably make that. We had the idea that if we made good enough time, we could reach Georgia Bore tonight. Mataliri Well 22 looked much like Well 21 in terms of the hole, but there was time for a more novel photo. Gotta have something to send on SSTV tonight. This well wasn't restored by Snell in 1929, but instead was restored in 1954 to allow the Doman cattle stations to use the stock route to Wiluna. It's not far to go from here. Just one last point of interest.
Is this supposed to be a repeating warning about leaving spin effect under your car?
I think it's a pretty damn good one. Here we go. FX1T. The last of the FX markers. And there it was, Georgia Bore. Drilled and equipped by the CRA for use by their survey crews, named after the newly born daughter of the senior geologist on the survey expedition, left in place for the use of travellers on the Canning stock route. But what's the deal with these signs? Had something catastrophic happened in the past week or so we've been out of contact with the world? Would we be unwelcome in Kanewarchi, unable to purchase fuel to continue any further? Or were the signs simply put up in March 2020 and forgotten about since then?
So the other end of the Talawana track actually goes on to well 23, 24, turns off shortly after 24. So I read in the track notes for the Talawana track that you can now tell people you've done part of the CSR if you've done the Talawana track. So the Talawana track was another one of Len Biddell's works, and that was built for part of a geodetic survey of Australia. Yeah, that's lost a bit of pressure. That's down to about 10, so we'll have to chuck some soapy water on that.
I decided to remove the bash plates and clean out all the spin effects that had accumulated around the vehicle, lest it end up like a few of the other examples we had seen.
Safety first.
Time to finish putting the car back together and watching the sunset. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you next time.